On this episode of Pistonhead Garage, I'm installing a new mount for an old plow. What is up, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of Pistonhead Garage. My name is Garrett, and if you are new to this show, I post here doing DIY videos as well as sort of vlog style videos of things that I'm doing around my shop in terms of like upgrading vehicles and services and that sort of stuff. We also do post event coverage as well as other random automotive related videos. So if you like that kind of stuff and you haven't seen any other videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button and check them all out, because we do post a variety of content. You're likely going to be seeing a lot more diesel videos from me in the coming episodes, just because I have a few things to do around the shop. I just moved. This is my new shop here, which I will, once I get it cleaned up, have a little tour and do a little shop walk around with you guys. But for now, we're just going to see, what you're going to see of the shop is what you see in this video. I'm not going to actually walk around and show you everything. But anyway, on today's episode, I'm putting a new plow on my truck. Now, if you notice behind me, there is a plow on this truck, but it's not quite right for what I want to do. So I'm going to explain next why I'm upgrading. All right, I apologize for any background noise you might be hearing. That's probably the heater that you're hearing right now, the humming. So it's cold out here. You can't see it right now, but it's snowing outside, which is another reason why I need to get started on this. So what you see here is what I call the Franken plow. This is a D2K Summit. It's basically a consumer grade light home use plow. This one in particular is a universal mount. It mounts with a 2-inch receiver underneath my truck here. I just have a normal Curtis brand or whatever 2-inch receiver hitch that mounts the truck. And then you have the plow frame that comes off of this receiver here on this side. You can buy custom mounts for these that fit specific vehicles, but because it's a light duty plow, they don't make mounts for a 1-ton Ram. So that's number one reason why I'm swapping this out, because when you're plowing with this thing and you've got all the weight of this truck behind the plow and you hit something on either side of the blade, the whole assembly, the whole frame wants to pivot that direction, and it pivots on this 2-inch receiver, which isn't a very large pivot point, not a very strong pivot point, mind you, and it ends up bending things. And I've bent the plow side of the hitch a couple times now. I've been upgrading it and reinforcing it, and now it's not really bending anymore, but now I of course have this risk where I bend the truck. So I don't want to do that. I also don't want to have to make a custom mount for this plow, because like I said, they don't make one for this truck that just bolts on. And I was originally contemplating it, just taking this receiver hitch that's on here and adding brackets to it and making a custom mount system for it. I've seen lots of guys on YouTube who've done that. But that's not my cup of tea. I'm not a fabricator, so I'm very, very rudimentary welding skills, as you'll see when I go over this plow. So from the factory, this plow has a winch that raises and lowers the blade. It just mounts right on this plate right here. And to pivot the plow, there's a lever you pull and like a pin, and then you can slide it, lock it into place, and then every time you want to pivot it, you have to get out of the truck, pull the lever, pivot it, lock it in, and then you can keep going. So what I did last spring is I converted the entire plow's operation to be hydraulic. So you can see here we've got a hydraulic lift cylinder, and below me are the 2 pivot cylinders. And I basically just made some brackets. I used bolts as pivot pins. I made this whole assembly right here with a chain lift, which is actually it works great. I bought this all-in-one plow power unit. So it's a hydraulic power unit that has all the valves and everything built into it. It came with the controller. It's a very basic up-down, left-right controller. So all I had to do was buy the hydraulic lines and install it, and connect my cylinders, and away she goes. And it works. It works. But like I said earlier, this is a light-duty home plow. And with the new shop that I own, I also own a little bit more property, which means a bit bigger driveway, because we live a bit more in the country now. And I'm worried that I'm going to be using this a lot more. Because at my old place, I was just plowing a small 4-car driveway, and we had a back alleyway to access the shop. So there wasn't a lot of plowing. I wasn't worried about obstacles because it was pavement, basically. Whereas here it's all gravel, and I'm much more worried because, especially because I'm unfamiliar with the property, that I might hit something with this plow and break the plow, or and render it useless. So although it is working great, I did use it once already, and it worked fine. I am a little bit concerned that it's going to take a lot more wear, and I need a bigger plow. So I won't show you the plow that I'm upgrading to just yet because it is outside, and I don't want to go outside right now. I will give you a basic show of the operation of this thing. So the controller right now, because this thing got modified at the end of, or the beginning of this year, at the end of the winter time, I never got a chance to finish the wiring and test it. So for now, the wiring just runs outside. I have it running along the fender. It's attached to the antenna and then runs into the window, just to get it to work so I could use it during the last snowfall. So yeah, just give me 1 sec here. I'll grab the controller and show you the functionality of this thing. All right, so here's the controller. It's just a basic switch box. I guess there are 2 holes here that you can use to mount this to something, like maybe like a cup holder mount or something in the truck to allow you to operate this with one hand. But I kind of just sit it on my lap and then operate it like this or whatever. But yeah, we've got up, down, left, right. If you press the down button and it locks like that, and that allows the lift cylinder to go into float mode, which allows the plow to drop further than, so say you were to put it down on the ground and you were to go over the top of a hill and the blade would want to drop. That way the cylinder will allow it to drop and not hold it up by the chains as you go over a hill. So it just allows the blade to float basically on the ground that you're plowing. So yeah, when you press the button, the motor engages and the appropriate valve engages, and that actuates the cylinder that you're trying to operate. These lower cylinders here are single action, so they basically, fluid gets pumped into the back of this one, which pushes it out. That force then pushes the other one in, and when you want to go the other way, fluid gets pumped into the far cylinder, tilts the blade this way or pivots it this way, which then pushes this cylinder back in. So there isn't a back and forth of these cylinders, which is why you need 2. Because I mean, if you wanted to, you could do a double acting cylinder on this side or on that side or whatever, and it would do both pivots. But doing it this way adds a bit more strength for when you're hitting the edge of the blade on something. At least that's what I would figure. So anyway, so to raise it, like I said, you go up like that. Now the blade's up, and then you can pivot it. So just like that, and then float. Blade comes down and then stays in float. When it's in float, you can push this cylinder down. If I put it in the middle position, now you can't push it down anymore, so that's the difference there. Just take the tension out, and that's that. And as you can see here in front of me, you've got your main power connection right there, and then this is the plow control connection. So this is just a standard connector that I was actually used for the old plow to power the winch. I repurposed it to give me constant power to the pump assembly, and then the controls actuate the solenoids and turn the motor solenoid on and off to run the plow. So anyway, that's basically the gist of this thing. And like I said, I'm not going to be using this anymore, hopefully, as long as everything goes to plan. And today I'm going to be at least removing the hitch off the bottom here, and then I can get ready to mount the new plow mount, which is actually behind me. get a good angle up in here, but those two bolts you see up on in the center of the screen there, those are the two bolts that hold the bumper on, as well as the front mount hitch. So basically I undo those two nuts. You can see there the bolts are actually on the outside, and there's some spacers that come out, and then the hitch drops down. Pardon the light, but yeah, you can kind of see there. This is the hitch here at the bottom of the screen. And then yeah, do that on both sides. The hitch comes out, and the bumper hopefully doesn't fall on my head. And yeah, then I can basically get going on the install. Alright, so I got this side done. The driver's side's kind of up there, so I couldn't really show it happening on camera just because I can't get a really good angle and not be blocking it. But if you come in here, and you look up, let me zoom in here. So that bolt right there in the center, that was one of the bolts that came with the Curtis hitch. Now, if the truck came with compatibility brackets from factory, which I think a lot of US trucks do, then there's a bolt that's here already that you can reuse. Otherwise, you'll have to get a bolt for this, I believe. Or I think that these bolts over here, these long boys with the things on them, I think those nuts or bolts, I can't remember which, might be used in lieu of that if you don't have it. But I was able to reuse this, so we're good. And then let me just adjust the light here. Sorry for the shaky camera, I'm trying to do this with one hand. Up in there, those two bolts which are out of focus, those are the bumper mounting bolts. Those were reused. They're the factory bolts. So you just gotta undo those guys, slide the bolts back out of the way, put the bracket up, put the bolts back in, and then for now, I've just got everything kind of finger tight. So I'll put the other side in, and then we have to do all the brackets that connects everything together. All right, so we've got both sides on. I haven't tightened the bolts up yet. Well, this side I tightened up just for now because it was fitting kind of crooked, and I wanted to make sure that it was going to actually tighten down. So they're good. Everything looks to be where it should be, I think. I've also made the executive decision to not reinstall this valance until spring, just because I actually have to notch a huge amount out of it to fit this thing. Because there's another bracket that goes in here that the plow actually slides into. If you're familiar with Western plows, this is their ultra mount system. So there's a sleeve that goes in here that you could take off during the summer months, so that way you have a little bit more ground clearance. I don't have it near me, otherwise I would just stick it in here. But yeah, so I think the next step is we need to remove the sway bar bushings, or undo them anyway, and then let the sway bar drop, because the second set of brackets I think goes in around that to add support to these. So when you're pushing into the snow and this is trying to push back, it braces up against the frame that's up here. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at the instructions and we'll get those put in. Knew that was coming, and still I was unprepared. Okay, so we gotta take the bracket here. It goes between the sway bar and the frame of the truck. And they did provide some bolts, so I'll slide a bolt through, lift this thing into place if I can. And you gotta be careful about these because these are the nuts that these thread into are welded inside the frame. So if you cross thread them, you've basically ruined it. There's a chance that you might be able to save it, but like by tapping it out. But more than likely, there we go. More than likely, cross-threading it will result in having to, I don't know. There's not much you could do there. These are welded inside of a bracket. The bracket you could cut off and then weld a new nut in and then put another bracket in, but that's ridiculous. The other thing you could probably do is cut a notch on the inside here and somehow get the old nut out maybe and slide a new nut in on a magnet or something like that. But yeah, what I'm getting at is if you can help it, don't screw it up. Just like that. Let's just tighten these ones again. Alright. I feel confident with that, and at the very least, she's not going to come out easy. So the next step, there's some brackets that go between these sway bar brackets and these front mount brackets, and they get held together with the supplied bolts and lock nuts. So let's see how that goes, and we'll figure out which way they go on. So we've got these brackets here. They kind of seem to go either way. Definitely has to go on the outside of this bracket, or the inside of this bracket, which means it has to go on the inside of the sway bar bracket. Yeah, it does. So what I'm going to do, because these holes are not perfectly lined up, because this thing's probably not perfect, I'm going to finger tight, hopefully 3 of these, and I'm going to loosen the bolts that hold this front bracket so that I can wiggle it around enough to get these front holes lined up, and then I'll do the same thing on that side, and then we'll kind of snug everything out, but not too tight, because there's one more bracket that needs to go on. And I believe actually I need it to go on with all this. Well, thankfully it says that these go on any side you want them to. They're interchangeable. So I'm going to face the bent part out, I think. I like everything to be flat here. And then we'll thread our bolt through, start the lock nut, and get it to the nylon. Oh, I just noticed that these brackets are identical. They're not mirror images of each other, which is I guess why they say it's interchangeable. So the bent part faces in on this side, which I would like it if they were mirrors, but this will work. Alright, so it just goes like that between them. So let's see if we can't get these holes to line up. They do give you a decent amount of play. I think what I might do is put the bolt into the back, so that way I can tighten the nut easier and not have to tighten the bolt. Alright, so apparently my memory card filled up, so there's a bit you missed, but there's not that much. The front bracket got bolted into place, and then the thrust brackets that attach to the sway bar got bolted to the front brackets and tightened down, and then I tightened the rear mounting bolts for these brackets here and left the bumper mounting bolts loose. I then lowered the truck down, as you can see here. I cranked this thing up, lifted it up to kind of tuck it to where it's supposed to be so the bumper was level, and then I tightened the bumper mount / front mount bolts for these front brackets, and now the mount's in place. I also brought the receiver shoes over and installed those just to make sure they would fit. There is a bit of side-to-side play on these, which at first I thought might be because this is a half-ton plow, which I'll also get into in a bit. And this is a 3/4 ton or full-size blade mount system, but I checked the mount that came with the plow that's for a half-ton ram, and the width of this is the same. So I think this just is to allow for some movement and allow the blade to kind of settle into place when you're putting it on. But I could be wrong. Either way, I think it should work fine. We'll just measure the width of the mounts that go in here, and I'll kind of get these roughly in position when we go to bring the plow in, and then that'll be that. So this video has probably gone pretty long, so I'm likely going to split this into 2 parts. So in that case, if you want to see part 2, which is where we start doing the wiring side of things and actually get this plow mounted and operating, make sure you hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up so the video gets out there and more people see it. And make sure you're also subscribed if you want to see other automotive content, cars, and events and that kind of stuff. As always, my name's Garrett, and I'll see you next time on Pistonhead Garage.